Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to a brand new season of Marvel Snap, the Symbiote season. We're going to be looking at the brand new card, Agent Venom, to see if he's worth your precious resources. We're going to be looking at his key synergies, counters, and some decks that I brewed for Agent Venom. But before we do that, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate it. We're trying to get to 500 subs. I do weekly reviews on the new card in Marvel Snap, so definitely subscribe if you haven't yet. Let's get back into it. So the question now is, who is Agent Venom? Let's take a look. Agent Venom's real name is Flash Thompson. He's originated from Earth. His occupation is a former US Marine, and he's a superhero. His powers is super strength, agility, speed, reflexes, durability, camouflage, shape-shifting, and the ability to fire webbing. His weaknesses are exposure to heat or cold and prolonged exposure to sound waves, just like all the other symbiotes. Affiliations is the Guardians of the Galaxy, Avengers, and the Thunderbolts. His first appearance is Amazing Spider-Man in 2009. So in Marvel Snap though, he's a 2-cost, 4-powered card on reveal with the ability to set the power of all cards in your deck to 4. I think it's a pretty interesting and very niche ability. I think his ability is very close and similar to Bast, but just like a little bit better, right? It's like a lot more power. So I think he has his use cases. We'll see some of the decks that I've brewed for him. But yeah, I am as curious as you guys to see what are some pros and cons about Agent Venom. Let's take a look. So let's start talking about the pros about Agent Venom. So the first point is he has decent power for a 2-cost. So if you compare him to like a card like Maximus, which has a super negative effect, his is pretty good, you know, compared to him. So I think overall on average, his power, which is 4, is pretty good for a 2-cost card. Another point is that it opens up deck building. So he has definitely a very niche ability. But again, you have to surround him with the right type of cards, right? You don't want to surround him with like a very high statted powered cards, you know, that would ruin their power, right? So remember that it changes and it replaces the power of those cards. So again, it's not an add-on, it's a replace. So again, you want to surround him with like low powered cards generally, or cards that, you know, can generate power that are generally low. So again, it definitely builds up, you know, the creative mind of deck building. Another point is that it, you know, he gives power to 0-powered cards, which are great. Like it would power up cards like Iron Man, Mystique, Sage, you know, cards like that really are, you know, very low to the ground, but you can, you're juicing them up even more. Even Taskmaster, you know, that's another one, but again, you know, his power gets replaced, so whatever. Another pro about him is that it's hard to counter. It's an on reveal, right? So obviously, you know, the person that you're facing against, they do need to have prio. You know, maybe they can use Cosmo to stop the Agent Venom, but overall, like usually you should be able to pull off his ability. So I think it's a pretty good pro about him. But now let's talk about the cons. So cons, very niche ability. He's definitely not a plug and play type of card. He is definitely a card, in my opinion, that you need to build around. It's not a, he's not like again, a tech card that you can just throw him into a deck and expect him to work. But again, you have to build the deck around him. Another con about him is that he's a late dead draw. So if for example, if you draw him like 4 or 5 or even 6, that's pretty late. Maybe like 4 and 5 might be okay, but definitely on 6 is be pretty bad. You're just relying on his 4 powers. So again, that's a huge negative about him. And then you can't surround him again with high power cards. I know I mentioned about it earlier. Again, you don't want to surround him with like a Hela deck, for example, like where there's a bunch of cards that you need, you know, those really high statted high powered cards. So again, he replaces the power. I think those are some you know, good pros and cons about him. But now let's look at some key synergies and counters for Agent Venom. Some of the synergies of Agent Venom. So the obvious choice is Cerebro. He is resetting the power to those cards to 4. So Cerebro 4 is obviously a thing. So definitely maybe he could work there, but it might be a little bit of copium. Luke Cage is here as a protection card for Agent Venom. Just imagine if you get, you know, Shadow Kinged. That's brutal. So definitely he could help with that. And Iron Man's a great choice because, you know, Iron Man loves power. So definitely 4 powered Iron Man's would be nutty. You know, Mystique would be great as well, or even Sage, like I mentioned in before. So yeah, I think those cards would be great to synergize with Agent Venom. But for counters, Cosmo is a great counter to Agent Venom, obviously, because he's a on reveal card, you know, especially if they have prio. So watch out for Cosmo. Shadow King is brutal against Agent Venom. Imagine, you know, you get your Iron Man or, you know, Mystique reset by Shadow King, especially with, you know, you expecting that power to stay with Agent Venom. So be careful for that. My spicy pick is Baron Mordo, just in case if they, you know, they could ruin your hand draw, especially if you're, you know, running a deck that really relies on that next card. So again, I think a lot of people have slept on Baron Mordo, but I think he's a great counter against Agent Venom, especially when you're trying to draw cards, right? All right, so now let's take a look at some of the decks that I brewed for Agent Venom. I think they're pretty fun and competitive, so let's take a look. So the first deck that we have here is called Bouncing Agents. So this type of deck is more like a zoo flood type list where you're trying to generate a lot of power with very low cost cards. For Agent Venom's case, you can on curve literally play him and it would be fine, other than, you know, hitting Beast, but Beast will be okay. Ideal play lines is basically to just generate a lot of power, bounce them back to your hand, and then generate even more power. So yeah, this is definitely a interesting build where on turn 1, you could do any of those 1-cost cards. Turn 2, you can do either Agent Venom or Collector. And then you can even use Hawkeye to generate more power for Collector. Turn 2, you could even play Black Swan on curve with her activated ability. And then on turn, the last turn, or I should say on turn 5, then you can activate Black Swan to utilize all the 1-cost cards in this deck and the arrows from Hawkeye. So I think this deck would be pretty strong, even with finishers like Sage and Hitmonkey. You want to use all those 1-cost cards with Hitmonkey. He's gonna go crazy. And then Sage is just another finisher for this deck as well. So for me, I'm gonna be using this deck as my number 1, you know, deck that I'm gonna be trying out with Agent Venom. But yeah, let's take a look at another option for Agent Venom. So the next deck we have is called Agent Cerebro 4. Of course, I had to do a Cerebro deck. This deck, I think, is going to be very interesting, I would say. You know, Invisible Woman to protect your Cerebro or Mystique as well. Agent Venom, of course, you know, setting all the cards like Cerebro, Mystique, Iron Man to 4 power is crazy. And I think it's going to be very good. Mysterio is there as, you know, a 4 powered card, or you can even, you know, set, I believe you could set the power of 4 to those clones as well, or those illusions, I should say. Hope is there just to, you know, ramp out energy if you really need it. Makari and is very good, you know, it's a free cost. Makari. Jean Grey is great, especially with Claw as well. You know, those are definitely control pieces if you want to control you know, those lanes. Nocturne is great if you want some flexibility. Leech, of course, we're in a hella meta right now, so I think Leech would be pretty good. And then with Iron Man, of course, he's amazing. And you know, you want to utilize Iron Man possibly with Mystique, or you know, Mystique the Cerebro as well. So this list, I think, would be pretty good. You know, it has a few techs and it has a, you know, a lot of different play lines that you could do. You could spread the power, which is great about Cerebro. So yeah, definitely give this one a chance. And let's take a look at the third and final list. So this list is called Mr. Venom. It's a spin on, of course, Mr. Negative. So this one's a little bit tricky. Again, I know the synergy is not completely straightforward, but I will try to explain to the best of my ability. You want to ramp out Mr. Negative as soon as possible. So you would use Psylocke or Ravonna to get out Mr. Negative on turn 3. It really depends on your hand. So again, you don't want to Agent Venom your deck when you have Ravonna on board. It depends on what your hand is. Like if you have Iron Man or Mystique or Sage or Ironheart in your hand, then I think it's fine if you do Agent Venom. But if you don't, then you kind of want to avoid doing that. So again, he's just like an alternate win con if you want to juice up possibly, you know, Mystique or Iron Man if you don't even have Ravonna on board or in your hand. So again, it's a different take on Mr. Negative. Again, it's a little bit greedy. You could use Agent Venom on, you know, obviously, you know, Mystique and Iron Man and Ironheart and Sage. Different play lines would be like, oh, you could Wong, Sage a lane, or you could do, and then you can, you know, copy the Sage with Taskmaster. And obviously, you know, if you do Mr. Negative, you always want to do Jane right after that as well to get all those, you know, cheap cost cards. I would say just in general, be careful about Agent Venom in this list. Again, it's a little bit experimental on this one, but remember to, you know, look at your hand, assess what is in your hand, and then, you know, decide if you want to do Agent Venom. Since Agent Venom is the season pass card for the Symbiote season, he's technically not in spotlights, so I'm going to be going straight to his star rating. So let's see what I gave him. So for competitive, I gave him a 3 out of 5 stars. I think he'll be somewhat competitive, but again, it really depends on what you know, surround him with. For fun, I gave him a 2.5 stars. I don't think a lot of people find enjoyment of maybe, you know, setting a power to a certain deck. I know Bast is kind of like similar. It does it to the hand, but I don't know. It really, I guess that's a little bit more subjective. For flexibility, it was kind of tough, honestly. You know, building decks for him, it was a little bit tricky, and I was reaching quite a bit, especially that last deck that I featured. But yeah, I personally don't think he has a lot of flexibility, but maybe I haven't, you know, tapped the market. For future changes, I gave him a 2 star. I think potentially he could get buffed, but I don't really see him getting buffed, honestly. Other than that, I don't think I see him getting nerfed at all. So now let's take a look at my final thoughts about Agent Venom. Let's see if he's worth a snap or skip. So I say skip, actually. I know that he is a season pass card. Of course, go get the season pass. It's so worth it for all the resources that you get in the season pass for the entire month. But I would say overall, it's not really my flavor, and I don't think it's a flavor of most people because it is a very tricky card to play with. He is going to require a lot of deck building. I believe, you know, there will be maybe a deck that could be worth, you know, having him. But other than that, like, I personally don't think it's good for any casual snapper. It's gonna be very high skill type cards. So I believe personally you're probably gonna be, you know, owning this card anyways since it's a season pass card. But I think overall I would say skip because again, I don't think a lot of people are gonna play it, honestly. Let me know your thoughts on what you think about Agent Venom. Let me know in the comments below. And if you haven't yet, please like the video. Please subscribe to the channel. I would love for you to be a part of the community. So I'll see you guys on the next one. Happy snapping.